Take off the apron, Rosie. You're done. Rosie Callahan stood beside table 12 with a coffee pot in one hand and a little girl's inhaler in the other. The girl had dropped it beneath the booth. Rosie had crawled under to find it while 6 dinner checks waited at the register. Grant pointed at the clock. You left your section again. She couldn't breathe. Rosie placed the inhaler beside the child's trembling hand. I was gone for 40 seconds. You've been warned about playing hero. The dining room went quiet. Rosie's cheeks burned, but her voice did not rise. Let me close my tables. They shouldn't pay for this. Before your shift ends, Grant said, pulling the coffee pot from her hand. Now. Rosie reached behind her neck and untied the faded blue apron. In its pocket were $12 in tips, a grocery coupon, and a folded notice saying the rent was 5 days late. Her 10-year-old son Milo had drawn a tiny house on the back and written, "We only need one good day, Mom." At the kitchen door, 17-year-old dishwasher Ben Ortiz lowered his eyes. 2 cooks stared at their shoes. They all needed Grant's approval for next week's hours. She picked up her coat and walked toward the front door. Then she stopped. It had belonged to her father, a fire captain who had taught her to notice what panic hid. A door breathing inward, smoke moving against the vents, flames that sounded like paper being torn. Rosie heard that tearing sound above the music. She looked back. A thin black ribbon curled from the seam over the kitchen doors. The ceiling vent pulled it up, then pushed it down again. Grant, she said. Shut off the gas. He didn't turn. You don't work here. A dull boom rolled through the ceiling. The lights flickered. In the open kitchen, orange fire raced through the grease hood. A cook grabbed an extinguisher, but Rosie saw the flames disappear into the ductwork above him. Everybody out, she shouted. Rosie put the whistle to her lips. Its sharp blast sliced through the dining room. Leave your coats. Take the children. Use the front and garden exits. Grant lunged for the alarm, but the pull handle would not come down. A silver catering wire had been twisted around it. Rosie tore the wire loose with a steak knife and pulled. Bells exploded overhead. She sent Ben to open the garden doors, guided an elderly couple away from the kitchen, and lifted the little girl from table 12 when the child's knees gave out. My bear, the girl cried. Your dad has it. Rosie pressed the inhaler into her hand. Look at me. One breath at a time. Then Rosie saw the blue gas flames still burning beneath the stoves. She could have followed him. She had been humiliated, fired, and ordered never to return. Instead, Rosie handed the girl to her father, wrapped her coat around her mouth, and ran back into the smoke. Ben shouted after her, but she disappeared through the swinging doors. Heat clawed at her face. She dropped to her knees, reached behind the prep table, and turned the red gas valve until both hands shook. The flames beneath the burners died. Seconds later, the hood collapsed exactly where Rosie had been standing. She crawled beneath a curtain of smoke and stumbled through the garden exit as firefighters arrived. 93 guests and 21 employees stood safely in the parking lot. The fire captain later said that if the gas had fed the duct fire for 1 more minute, the entire dining room could have become an oven. A black sedan stopped behind the engines. Adrian Cole, the restaurant's wealthy owner, stepped out without an umbrella or an assistant. He stared at the burned roof of the place his mother had founded. Grant rushed toward him. I started the evacuation, sir. Ben's wet face lifted. No, you didn't. Adrian crossed the parking lot and knelt in front of her. Before he could speak, a firefighter held up the wire cut from the alarm. This wasn't an accident, he said. Someone made sure nobody could warn the room. At the hospital, Rosie asked the nurse for the cheapest bandage. It doesn't work that way, the nurse said. It does when your insurance ended 40 minutes before you got burned. A man's voice came from the doorway. Send the bill to Cold Dining. Adrian stood there holding Rosie's smoke-stained coat. Up close, he looked less like the face from business magazines and more like a tired man who had forgotten how to sleep. Rosie took the coat. Pay the dishwashers for the shift you're canceling tomorrow. I can do both. Then do both. He almost smiled. You always negotiate from a hospital bed? Only when rich men think gratitude is the same thing as justice. Adrian looked at her wrapped palms. No employee had spoken to him that way in years. Most people studied his watch before they chose their words. Grant says the alarm was tied back during a private event, he said. He says you were fired for repeated insubordination. Grant says whatever keeps Grant standing. And what do you say? Rosie reached into her coat and removed Milo's drawing. Smoke had smudged the little house. I say I needed that job too badly to invent a reason to lose it. The door opened. Milo rushed in with Rosie's father behind him. Frank Callahan moved slowly with a cane, but his old fire captain's eyes took in the bandages, the soot and the whistle at Rosie's neck. You went back inside, he said. Rosie nodded. Frank turned away so Milo would not see his fear. Milo climbed onto the bed and pressed his forehead against his mother's shoulder. Was this our one good day? Not yet, she whispered. We still have plenty of day left. Adrian noticed the boy's shoes. The right sole was held on with silver tape. He glanced at his own polished shoes, then quietly stepped behind the curtain when Milo began to cry. The next morning, Adrian gathered the staff outside the closed restaurant. He announced full pay during repairs and an independent safety investigation. Grant stood beside him in a clean suit, nodding as if the decision had been his. Rosie arrived to return her locker key. Adrian held out an envelope. $5,000. No conditions. Every employee watched. Rosie did not touch it. Ben told management 3 times that the hood fan was making noise. Did anyone answer him? Grant's jaw tightened. A dishwasher is not a safety inspector. Neither am I, Rosie said. But I knew enough to listen. She handed the locker key to Adrian. Taped to it was a list of names. What's this? People who lost tips last night. Split the money among them. You saved their lives. That doesn't make their rent disappear. One by one the employees raised their eyes. The cooks. The servers. Ben. Something quiet passed between them, not pity but respect. Adrian folded the list and put it in his pocket. I want you on the investigation team. Grant laughed once. She was fired. Then she can't be intimidated by losing her job. Adrian looked at Rosie. 3 paid days. Tell me what my reports don't. Rosie wanted to say no. She had spent 6 years being invisible in that dining room. Being seen now felt almost dangerous. As Rosie turned to leave, the father from table 12 approached with his daughter. The child carried a teddy bear under one arm. With the other, she offered Rosie a paper star torn from a children's menu. For being brave, she said. Rosie crouched until they were eye to eye. You were brave first. You remembered how to breathe. The girl tucked the star into Rosie's bandage. Adrian watched Rosie turn praise into courage the child could keep, and suspicion shifted toward trust. Then Ben slipped a grease-stained notebook from beneath his jacket. I found this behind the manager's office after the fire, he said. Your name is in it. The notebook was old, its blue cover curled by heat. Rosie opened it. On the first page, in handwriting she had not seen since childhood, were 4 words. June Callahan was right. June was Rosie's mother. And she had been dead for 18 years. Rosie sat at a sidewalk table while fire crews moved through the restaurant behind yellow tape. Her burned fingers hovered over the notebook as if touching the pages might erase them. My mother worked here, she told Adrian. Back when it was one small dining room and your mother still cooked. I don't remember her. Your company made sure of that. On a page dated October 1998, June had drawn the old kitchen's exhaust system. Beside it, she had listed loose wiring, grease buildup, and a shutoff valve that stuck. At the bottom was Margaret Cole's signature, Adrian's mother. Adrian read it twice. There was a fire that year. I know. My mother was blamed for it. June had been a prep cook, widowed and raising Rosie alone. After the fire, the restaurant's insurer accused her of leaving oil unattended. No charges were filed, but the story spread. Every decent kitchen in the county stopped calling her back. She cleaned motel rooms at night until her heart failed at 46. Rosie turned to another page. Half had been torn away. Why would this be in Grant's office? Adrian asked. Maybe because someone didn't want it in yours. Grant appeared beyond the tape. That notebook is company property. Rosie closed it. It was my mother's life. It was found in my office. After you said the alarm tied itself shut? Adrian stepped between them. Grant, go home. You're taking her word over mine? I'm taking 3 minutes to read before someone tells me what to think. Grant's face changed. For a second, anger gave way to fear. Be careful, Adrian. Your father built this company by knowing which old doors should stay closed. He walked away. That afternoon, Rosie joined Adrian and an investigator inside the damaged kitchen. Soot covered the steel walls. The automatic suppression tanks were full, but their release pin had been removed. The hood cleaning certificate was new. The grease above it was not. Ben found an email on the office printer. He had saved it because the blank side was good for sketching. In Grant's message to a maintenance company, he had written, * delay full cleaning until after quarterly review. Use visual inspection only, *. Ben flinched when Adrian asked why he had not emailed the complaint. People like you don't read messages from people like me, he said. Adrian opened his phone and searched Ben's name. 3 unread emails appeared. The oldest was 6 months old. Adrian's thumb rested above them. You were right, he said. I didn't read them. He handed Ben a business card, then tore it in half. That number reaches an assistant. Put yours in my phone instead. Ben did. It was a small correction, not forgiveness, but for the first time he believed the owner might listen. He was cutting costs, Adrian said. Rosie shook her head. He was hiding them. Adrian had tied every manager's bonus to short-term profit. Grant had missed 2 targets. A real hood cleaning would have erased the third. I designed that bonus system, Adrian said. Rosie wiped soot from the red gas valve she had turned. Then you taught him what mattered. The words landed harder than blame. Adrian looked through the broken kitchen window at employees waiting for news. He knew quarterly numbers, labor percentages, and the price of every plate. He did not know Ben drew on discarded paper because his mother could not afford art supplies. Rosie found something wedged behind the valve, a small metal measuring spoon, blackened at the edges. The handle was engraved with the initials M.C. Adrian took it with both hands. My mother used this, he said. She wore it on a chain after the first fire. Why? She said it reminded her that one careful measure could save a recipe. He swallowed. She never told me who saved her. That evening Adrian drove Rosie home. Her apartment sat above a laundromat. Frank slept in a chair beside an oxygen machine while Milo did homework at a table balanced with a folded napkin. Adrian placed the spoon beside the blue notebook. Frank woke and stared at it. Where did you get that? He asked. In the kitchen, Rosie said. Frank's hand tightened around his cane. Your mother carried Margaret Cole out of that fire. Rosie went still. Then why did everyone blame her? Frank looked at Adrian, not Rosie. Because Adrian's father came to our house with a lawyer, he said. And I told June to sign the lie. The oxygen machine hummed in the silence. Rosie stared at her father. You told her? Frank's eyes filled, but he did not look away. You were 9. The insurance company was going to close the restaurant. Thomas Cole offered enough money for us to keep the house. We lost the house. 6 months later. Your mother used the money for my surgery. He tapped the damaged leg beneath his blanket. I was hurt on a warehouse call. No disability check had come. Rosie pushed back from the table. The blue notebook fell to the floor. Milo appeared in the bedroom doorway. Mom? She picked up the notebook before he could see her hands shake. Finish your math, baby. When the door closed, her voice dropped. All these years I thought she made a mistake. She did, Frank said. She loved us more than she loved the truth. Adrian flinched. His own father had died praised as a visionary. The company lobby displayed a bronze plaque bearing his favorite sentence. Reputation is what remains when the smoke clears. Now Adrian understood what had been cleared away. Did my mother know? He asked. Frank nodded. Margaret begged Thomas to tell the truth. He told her the employees would lose everything. Then he sent her away to recover and settled it before she came home. She stopped cooking after that fire. Guilt can make a person put down what she loves. Adrian took out his phone and called the company attorney. Open the 1998 insurance archive. Everything. No board summary. The attorney hesitated. That file is sealed. Not from me. The next morning, Adrian brought Rosie to see Margaret Cole. She lived alone in a house larger than Rosie's entire apartment building. Yet she sat at a small kitchen table, peeling apples with a shaking hand. At 78, her memory came and went like a porch light in a storm. Adrian set the blackened measuring spoon before her. Margaret stopped peeling. June, she whispered. Rosie's anger broke around the sound of her mother's name. Margaret reached for her face. You have her eyes. Did she save you? Rosie asked. Margaret nodded. The ceiling came down. Everyone ran. June wrapped me in a wet tablecloth. She said, Your boy still needs his mother. Adrian turned toward the window. He had been 12. Margaret opened a drawer and removed an envelope softened by years. It was addressed to Rosie in June's handwriting. I tried to mail it, Margaret said. Thomas always found it. Then I became ashamed of waiting. Rosie unfolded the letter. June had not written about blame. She wrote about soup. During the restaurant's worst winter, she and Margaret had fed laid-off factory families after closing. June included the recipe and one request. Asterisk if Rosie ever comes here, let her know I was not afraid of the fire. I was afraid kindness would become something only rich people could afford. Asterisk. Rosie pressed the paper to her chest. Margaret looked at Adrian. We built that dining room so nobody had to eat alone. He sat beside her. I turned it into numbers. Then turn it back. For the first time in years, Adrian placed his hand over his mother's. She recognized him and smiled. It lasted only a moment, but Rosie saw the lonely boy beneath the expensive suit. On Margaret's refrigerator, Rosie noticed a faded photograph of two young women in kitchen whites. June stood beside Margaret, flour across both their faces, holding the long community table they had built from shipping crates. On the back June had written, For the nights when there is always room. Rosie had never seen her mother look so proud. Margaret traced June's smile with one finger. She made me brave, she said. Rosie placed her hand over Margaret's. Anger was still there, but it no longer stood alone. Grief, gratitude, and the first fragile thread of forgiveness had entered the room beside it. Outside, Adrian offered Rosie the investigation job permanently. I don't want a position created from guilt, she said. Then tell me what you want. The truth in writing. My mother's name cleared. Safe repairs. Every worker included in what happens next. Done. His phone rang before she could answer. The company attorney spoke fast enough for Rosie to hear pieces. Original report, fraudulent statement, insurance exposure. Adrian's face lost its color. How bad? Rosie asked. He ended the call. If we publish the truth, the insurer can reopen the old claim and deny this one, he said. The board will close the restaurant by Friday. 67 people will lose their jobs. Rosie looked through Margaret's window at the old woman holding June's measuring spoon. The truth had finally come home. And now telling it could destroy everyone her mother had tried to protect. The board meeting took place 40 floors above the city, around a table long enough to keep every person safely apart. Rosie wore her only dark dress. One cuff hid a bleach stain. Adrian sat beside her, not at the head of the table. Board Chair Evelyn Ross slid 2 documents forward. The first was a public statement saying the 1998 fire had been investigated according to the standards of the time. The second offered Rosie $200,000 in exchange for confidentiality. That is not hush money, Evelyn said. It is compassionate assistance. Rosie read the first line and pushed both documents back. Compassion usually lets people keep their voice. Mrs. Callahan, this company employs 4,000 people. Miss Callahan. Evelyn's smile thinned. One old accusation could threaten all of them. Adrian opened the archived report. It is not an accusation. My father paid for a false statement. Your father saved a young company. He buried a woman to do it. Evelyn turned to Rosie. Your mother accepted the agreement. Rosie felt the room tilt. My mother chose between truth and her injured husband. Men with lawyers made sure she couldn't have both. The board's attorney explained the risk. If the old fraud became public, lenders could freeze the company's credit. The damaged restaurant would close first. 67 jobs would disappear, followed by more if the story spread. Then Evelyn placed photographs on the table. Rosie's apartment, Frank entering a clinic, Milo walking to school. The settlement would pay your father's medical bills, she said. It would put your son somewhere safe. Adrian stood. You had her followed? We evaluated need. Rosie stared at Milo's taped shoe in the photograph. For one dangerous second, she imagined new shoes, a quiet bedroom, medicine without counting pills, and a refrigerator that stayed full past Wednesday. She picked up the pen. Adrian said nothing. If he stopped her, he would be asking her family to suffer for his conscience. Rosie looked at the signature line. Then she remembered June's letter. Kindness should not become something only rich people can afford. She set the pen down. I won't trade my mother's name, she said. But I won't trade 67 families for it either. Give us 30 days before you close. Let the workers show you what this place is worth. Evelyn gathered the papers. The bank does not accept good intentions. Neither does a hungry child. We still feed them. The board voted 7-2 to close the restaurant on Friday. Outside, Adrian leaned against the elevator wall. I own 38%. They can outvote me. Then stop walking into rooms alone, Rosie said. But when she told the employees, the rooms split. Some wanted the truth released. Others begged her to sign. A line cook named Darnell had twins due in 6 weeks. Server Helen was 59 and one late mortgage payment from foreclosure. Grant stood near the back. He was suspended, but he had come to collect his things. Tell them the rest, he said. Tell them Adrian's investigation could cost every Cole restaurant its insurance. Ben stepped toward him. You tied the alarm. I tied it after 2 false pulls during a school event. I ordered a replacement box. Grant looked around the room. It was supposed to come Monday. You canceled the hood cleaning, Rosie said. Because corporate sent a target I could not hit. Missed 3 quarters and they replace you. My wife's treatment is on my insurance. His voice cracked, then hardened again. I made 1 week become the next week. Everyone in management does. No one defended him. But no one could call him a monster either. They knew what fear did to a person when a paycheck held someone else's medicine. At home, Rosie found an eviction notice beneath the door. Frank had heard about the offer. Take the money, he said. Your mother signed because she chose us. Don't turn her sacrifice into a punishment for Milo. And teach him a lie is fine when the price is high enough? Teach him a mother keeps a roof over her child. Rosie shut herself in the bathroom so Milo would not hear her cry. She pressed both bandaged hands over her mouth. For the first time since the fire, she wished she had walked through the front door when Grant fired her. Saving everyone had only given her more people to fail. A small envelope slid beneath the bathroom door. Inside were $38 and a note in Milo's careful handwriting. Asterisk my shoe money. For Grandma June's truth. Asterisk. Rosie opened the door and held her son until neither of them could speak. Her phone rang. Adrian was outside with Ben and a cardboard box recovered from Grant's office. Inside it were 7 years of ignored safety complaints from restaurants across the chain. On top was an email from Evelyn Ross. Delay all non-visible repairs until after the sale. The company was not being protected from one old lie. It was being prepared for buyers who could never be allowed to see the truth. Rosie spread the complaints across her kitchen table. Faulty ovens. Blocked exits. Broken freezer seals. Each form carried an employee's name and a manager's note saying, deferred by corporate. Adrian read until sunrise. I approved the sale review, he said. Evelyn told me repairs would happen after the acquisition. You believed a report because it had clean margins. Yes. He did not defend himself. That mattered to Rosie more than an apology. Ben pointed to a column of initials. GK sent the complaints up. Gear sent them back. Grant had hidden evidence, cut cleaning costs, and tied the alarm. But he had also warned the board before fear made him obedient. The truth was not a straight line between good people and bad people. It was a chain of small cowardly choices, each person trusting the next would fix them. Rosie called Grant. He arrived without his suit jacket. He looked smaller in the laundromat's morning light. "Why keep copies?" she asked. "Insurance," he said. "For the workers?" He looked away. "For me." Rosie slid his first complaint toward him. "You knew what was right before you got scared. Help us prove the dates. Evelyn will destroy me. Maybe. Or you can keep helping her destroy people who never entered that boardroom." Grant stared at the form. "I have a wife who may not live to see Christmas. Then go home and tell her what you did to keep her insurance. Let her decide if silence feels like love." He left without an answer. Adrian wanted to take the file straight to reporters. Rosie stopped him. "First, we protect the people whose names are on those pages." Together they called every worker. Adrian used his personal line of credit to guarantee 8 weeks of wages at the damaged location. Rosie made him put it in writing. Ben organized statements. Helen offered the church basement for meetings. Darnell brought soup. By evening, 67 folding chairs filled the room, and everyone was occupied. Adrian stood before them without a stage. "My company rewarded people for hiding what cost money," he said. "I did not tie that alarm, but I built a system where Grant believed tying it was safer than disappointing me. I am responsible for changing that system, whether I remain CEO or not." The room stayed quiet. Then Rosie rose. "My mother saved this restaurant once and lost her name. I saved it again and lost my job. I don't want either sacrifice turned into a framed story while nothing changes." She placed 67 index cards on a table. "Write what you need to return. Not what executives think you need. Safe equipment. Predictable hours. A voice when something is wrong. Childcare. Training. Write the truth." People came forward one at a time. Rosie pinned the cards to the church wall. Needs that had sounded private became a shared plan. Adrian read every card twice, this time without an assistant deciding which voices reached him. That was the moment the restaurant began to reopen, even with boards over its windows. The next day, Evelyn announced Adrian's temporary removal as CEO. Her public statement blamed local management failures and promised a swift internal review. She also petitioned a judge to seize the blue notebook as corporate property. But Grant did not go home to hide. He went to the fire marshal. He admitted tying the alarm after Evelyn denied money for repairs. He provided server backups showing altered inspection dates. He did not ask for immunity. "Why now?" the marshal asked. Grant twisted his wedding ring. "My wife asked whether I saved her by becoming someone she would be ashamed to live with." By afternoon, the state suspended the chain's self-inspection authority. Lenders paused the sale, not the payroll. Evelyn's plan began to collapse. Adrian visited his mother with a camera. Margaret was confused at first. Rosie made June's soup and placed the engraved spoon beside the bowl. The smell of thyme brought the old kitchen back to her. Margaret looked directly into the lens. "June Callahan did not start the fire," she said. "She carried me through it. My husband bought her silence and I let shame keep it." Then she held up June's letter. "A business is not the sign above its door. It is the people we refuse to leave behind." Adrian sent the recording to every board member. Evelyn called within minutes. "If that video becomes public, your family name is finished." Adrian looked at Rosie, Frank, Milo, and his mother sharing soup around the small table. "No," he said. "For the first time it will be honest." The board meeting was set for Friday, the same hour the restaurant's locks were scheduled to change. This time Adrian and Rosie would not be walking in alone. On Friday morning, Evelyn entered the boardroom and found 67 index cards arranged around the polished table. The employees filled the hallway outside. Firefighters stood with them. So did former cooks who remembered June, families she had fed, and guests Rosie had led through the smoke. Evelyn picked up one card. "If I report danger, I need to know my children will still eat." "This is theater," she said. "No," Rosie answered. "Theater has an audience. These are the people who paid for decisions made in this room. The state investigator joined by video. Grant's records appeared on the screen beside the 1998 report. Dates had been changed. Repairs had been deferred. Executive bonuses had risen. Evelyn kept her voice calm. Mr. Keller acted without authorization. Grant stepped through the door. I tied the alarm, he said. I delayed the cleaning. I fired Rosie because she kept noticing what I needed everyone to ignore. Rosie held his gaze. But Evelyn ordered the numbers hidden, he continued. And Adrian made numbers more valuable than voices. There is enough blame for all of us. Adrian rose. He's right. His attorney whispered for him to stop. He did not. I accept the findings against my leadership. I will testify. I will also use my shares to block the sale and fund the required repairs. You don't have the votes, Evelyn said. A side door opened. Margaret Cole entered on Frank's arm. Milo carried the blue notebook. Ben carried a laptop with Margaret's recorded statement ready for release. Margaret placed the blackened measuring spoon in the center of the table. I still own the founders' voting shares, she said. Evelyn's face finally changed. Margaret had not attended a board meeting in 11 years. With her vote, Adrian's shares, and 2 directors who changed sides after seeing the evidence, the sale was stopped. Evelyn was removed pending the state investigation. An outside safety monitor was appointed. The old insurance fraud was disclosed publicly. Then Margaret did something no one expected. She transferred half her voting shares into an employee trust. Ben carried the first trust ballot into the hallway. Helen touched the paper as if it might vanish. Darnell called his wife and said, "Our babies own part of the place now." Then the cooks began tapping spoons against coffee cups. The sound traveled from the hallway into the boardroom. Rosie listened to workers make themselves impossible to ignore, and Adrian let their noise fill the room he had once kept silent. No alarm should ever be easier to silence than a worker, she said. The hallway erupted, but Rosie did not celebrate yet. She turned to Grant. You should face what you did. I know. Your wife being sick explains your fear. It does not erase our burns. I know that too. He surrendered his keys to the fire marshal. Justice did not look like revenge. It looked like a man finally standing still while consequences reached him. Outside, reporters crowded Rosie. Are you suing? One asked. Will you return as a waitress? Asked another. Rosie looked through the restaurant's dark windows. The dining room where Grant had humiliated her was covered in ash. Still, she could see the shape of what June had wanted, a place where nobody ate alone. Adrian offered her a folder. Inside was a proposal naming Rosie director of the restored restaurant and chair of the Employee Safety Council. It included profit sharing, authority over hiring, and a community meal budget. This isn't a reward, he said. It's power. You should have it. Rosie took out a pen. One change, she said. Ben gets paid training. Every location gets an anonymous safety line. And nobody gets fired before an incident review. That is 3 changes. I'm new to executive counting. Adrian smiled. It was the first smile she had seen reach his eyes. Rosie sighed. Across the street, Milo blew Frank's brass whistle once. The same sound that had emptied the burning dining room now stopped the crowd. Rosie held up June's blue notebook. This restaurant was saved twice by women it could not afford to see, she said. It will reopen when it knows how to see everyone. 6 months later, the old sign came down. Rosie stood on a ladder while Milo steadied it. In its place, workers raised a new sign, June's Table, and no one eats alone. The restaurant reopened with fewer expensive booths and one long community table made from the undamaged floorboards. A brass plate beneath it carried the names of every person who had helped during the fire. Grant's name was included because, before fear overtook him, his first complaint had told the truth. Some employees argued that he did not deserve a place. Rosie answered, a record should be complete, not comfortable. Grant pleaded guilty to safety violations and falsifying reports. He lost his management license and served community hours teaching small businesses what his choices had cost. Rosie never called that forgiveness. She called it a beginning he had to earn. Ben entered a culinary and safety program through the Employee Trust. On opening night he wore a chef's coat and smiled. Helen kept her house. Darnell's twins slept through the ribbon cutting, one in each of Margaret's arms. Adrian returned as chief executive under independent oversight. His new reports put injuries, turnover, and employee concerns before profit. It also became worth belonging to. Rosie ran the dining room with her blue apron folded in her office. On Tuesdays she carried trays at the free family supper because it kept her close to June. On the first Tuesday, a boy hid bread in his coat. Rosie did not expose him. She packed 2 bowls of soup, added a loaf, and wrote the supper hours on the bag. "Bring someone next week," she said. He returned with his grandmother. Frank sat near the kitchen beneath a glass case holding his brass whistle, Margaret's measuring spoon, and June's letter. His health was failing, but he had lived long enough to see his wife's name cleared in every newspaper that once printed the lie. One evening Rosie found him alone before the case. "I should have protected her," he said. Rosie sat beside him. "You were scared. So was she. She loved you anyway." Frank touched the glass. "Do you?" Rosie leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm still learning what forgiveness costs." It was not a perfect answer. It was an honest one, and that was how healing entered their family, not like a door thrown open but like a chair pulled out and left waiting. Margaret's memory faded. Some days she called Rosie by June's name. Rosie placed the engraved spoon in her hand and asked, "What does the soup need?" Margaret always answered, "Someone to share it with." Adrian spent Tuesdays at the community table. Milo made him put away his reports. He arrived with rolled sleeves and served soup beside Rosie. One night after the last family left, Adrian and Rosie sat beneath the new sign. "You could have walked away," he said. "After Grant fired you, you owed this place nothing." Rosie looked at the rebuilt kitchen, at Ben laughing with the cooks, and at their parents talking softly by the window. "Maybe I didn't save the place," she said. "Maybe I saved the people and they built a better place afterward." Adrian reached across the table. He did not take her hand. He left his palm open between them. Rosie looked at it, smiled, and placed her bandaged hand in his. Above them hung Milo's old drawing of the tiny house. The smoke stains had never come out. He had added a larger table beside it and 67 bright chairs. At the bottom he had crossed out his first sentence. It no longer read, "We only need one good day." Now it said, "One good choice can make room for everyone." The night Rosie was fired, she had every reason to keep walking. Some believed she should have. Others believed saving a life is never a debt owed to the person who hurt you. Rosie never settled that argument. She simply kept a chair open, because dignity was not a reward for good behavior, kindness was not surrender, and the truest measure of a life was who still had a place at the table when the smoke finally cleared.